Welcome to the Do Hard Things podcast with your host, Jay Teagues. Are you ready to amplify and improve your life? Then you're in the right place. On this podcast, we have unfiltered conversations with inspiring people who take on challenges and are here to share with us their wisdom from their journey. We talk about how doing hard things enable all of us to adequately deal with life's struggles and challenges and to ultimately improve the quality of our lives. All right, we're live. Luge Hardman, how are you doing?
Hello, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. When I've been thinking about doing a podcast for a while, and I think about, the short list of people that I wanted to have on, and you have definitely been one of those people that you're just a great person. And
you're so
I love the fact that although we have different ideologies, we've always had great conversations. I respect the fact that you've dedicated your life to public service as a teacher. Then you got into politics. And I just see how, on social media, all of the vitriol that you have received, and you've just handled it with such grace. Your husband, whom I never had the opportunity to meet, and just seeing the journey of, his passing and how you've handled that. I just think you're a remarkable person. And one of my greatest honors was when we had the Veterans Day Parade here locally. The Veterans Day Parade is a big deal here in this community near Fort Leonard Wood. And you asked me to be your honorary guest for the day, and I got to drive you around. And then that meant so much to me. I can't even tell you how much I appreciated that.
I actually have pictures of that day, Jay.
What's that?
I have pictures of that day.
I think I got a couple, but if you've got more, you need to get some of those for me. That was awesome.
So here's what I appreciate you. Here's what I remember the first time I met you. I had been honored to go out to Fort Leonard Wood to start a running event.
Yeah.
They were running the hills out toward the golf course. And that's where I met you for the first time. And your three girls were with you. And so it was just a fun thing to meet you. I tell you, ever since I've met you, you have been one of my favorite people.
Well, thank you. That's a tremendous honor. Thank you.
Now that you're taking this journey through motivation and all the different things that you've come up with, I am one of your favorite followers because I share your memes everywhere.
Well, thank you.
You've always got something good to say, and I appreciate that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You asked me to introduce myself a little bit, but I think you're going to read a bio that will tell details about me. But if I had to describe myself, I would basically just say I'm an old country girl from the hills of Arkansas. And one of the things I think that plays into my story, Jay, is that I was born in the hills of Arkansas. There were 6 of us kids. We didn't have indoor plumbing till I was in junior high school. We were poor as church mice, but I've said to many people, I would not take anything for my raising. And so I think one thing that I am most proud of in my life is going to college. And, I was the first one in my family to go to college, much less graduate. And now I think a couple of my nieces and nephews have graduated from college. So it was just not the thing to do in my little corner of the Ouachita Mountains down in southern Arkansas. But I've been a teacher 30 years in the Waynesville schools and also taught college for Drury. And I've been a wife. I was married to Paul Hardman for 42 years. And I've been a mother. I'm a mother to Ann and Trey. And I have 7 grandchildren. And then when I retired from teaching, I decided, I think I got some ideas to make Waynesville a better place. And I ran for city council and got involved in the downtown renovation, which I tell about in my book, by the way. And then, of course, in 2012, I ran for mayor. And then my next step, and hopefully we'll talk about it a little bit today. I don't think we have video, but there's my book. And I got that today, actually, and been working on it for the past year. I used to joke, Jay, when I'd give speeches as mayor, I would say, everybody needs to treat me a little better because I'm going to write a book. And I think they all thought I was joking, that I was not going to do that. And unbeknownst to them, I was secretly collecting every picture, Facebook post, notes, letters, pictures. I was collecting all this stuff because I had in my mind that I thought a lot of people might be interested in what's it like being a small town mayor and the day-to-day things that go on in small town politics. And those are my two focuses in my book. And as I told you earlier, we did get the proof on that today. And hopefully in the next week and a half, something like that, we're going to be offering a book on Amazon. And it's called Small Town Mayor by Luge Hardman. And I hope some of you pick it up and that you get some good things out of it. Those are things, I've always been a goal setter.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you are.
Yeah.
I'm a goal setter, and I work for, in my head, I've got objectives that I want to do and that I want to complete. And I've always been, my husband used to say, you're awfully anal in how you look at things, because everything has to be done properly, and it has to be done, first of all. So one of the questions you asked me is, why public service? And of course, teaching, I just always knew I was going to be a teacher. Always. And public service, I think that the main thing that drove me there was that I wanted to make things better in my town, in Waynesville. Waynesville had been really neglected and run down, not much attention given to the downtown area. And that's what got me involved in council, in the city council. Wow. So I served on the city council, and in 2012, Cliff Hammock decided he wouldn't run for re-election, and I ran for mayor. And I hope that, again, I hope I made a difference here. And I hope that when people think about me, they'll think downtown. They'll think the playground.
You've certainly made a difference to me. Like, I think about just leadership and service and how you selflessly serve this community. And you were always active. And every time I saw you, you're like an engaging, vibrant person that you called things out when you saw it. You put yourself out there on, this is a time where social media and it's not like you're receiving a huge paycheck from the city of Waynesville to throw yourself out there and do these things. What's that?
That would be $100.
So, yeah. So for the amount of money that you were receiving, it definitely wasn't for the money, right? No. But just you just put yourself out there and you just led and made an impact. And I just viewed you, it just stood out to me. And I don't, when I think about, local politics, we just had a local election here, 8% people turn out.
Yeah.
We're far more focused on, what's going on in Washington. Well, we need to be more focused here. When I think about people that step up to lead and make an impact, you did. Compared to other towns that I've lived in and mayors, didn't know who they were. Like I don't know. You just put yourself out there to where everyone knew who you were, and you led from the front, and you led by example.
I think, Jay, that social media plays a big role in that. And I embraced Facebook. I embraced the internet. Yeah. And it's a fairly new thing. And I would just say this in defense of the mayors who came before me. Most all of them had regular jobs, day jobs.
Yeah.
And so it was very hard for them maybe to make every event like I did. Yeah. But I was retired, and I was enjoying every minute of it. And if the Army invited me to be at something, I was at something.
And that's what's great about this community. It makes it very unique is that we have small town Waynesville, and then we've got St. Robert, and then we have the Fort Leonard Wood community.
Right.
And so this is a bigger populated area than it appears.
We always called ourselves the Tricities.
The Tri-City, yeah, exactly. There's some nuances that go along with the Fort and St. Robert and everyone trying to play nice together.
And I think that since myself and Mayor Lauritsen and St. Robert, that we were really intent on being better partners with Fort Leonard Wood. And some of the stories I tell in my book are just amazing. I would stop at the Burger King on Post, and privates in there eating would yell, "Hello, Mayor Hardman," because I went to the events. I was at the events, and I was at their graduation and, the different promotions. And so I just enjoyed it, enjoyed almost every day being mayor. One of the things that I learned from my public service is a whole lot about myself.
Yeah.
I'm 70 something years old, and you would think I would have gotten over what you posted today actually on your Facebook page, caring what other people think. And here I am in my 70s, and that's something that always has been an issue for me. You know, I have always, of course, I was a teacher, loved my students. I think a lot of times I was a rather popular teacher, and because of that, you kind of get this little attitude of, oh, everybody likes me. Well, you get into public service, and that's not true. And it took me a little while to figure that out. I would say probably a month. You know, because I would get upset over things people said. Yeah. And finally, my husband said to me one time, "Can I say bad words on here?"
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead. Okay. My husband
said to me one time, because I'd come home crying from city council meetings because people were so negative and mean, and literally they were mean. And one night he said to me, "You know, you're going to have to make up your mind. Either you want to do this project or you want to tell those people to kiss your ass and get on down the road."
Yeah.
And I will tell you, that was really became my motto. You know, I thought we could do this. I thought we could renovate our downtown. You know, and I don't know if you were here, Jay, back in the early 2000s, but 70% of the buildings in downtown Waynesville were empty, abandoned, neglected. Buildings were falling in, trees were growing in buildings, fungus was on the front of, you know, the facades. It was just not a nice place. There were no lights. So at night when you pulled into Waynesville, it was very, very dark and a dank place to be. I just thought that we could make a difference, and I thought that we could do it. And so I said, what did I learn from it? Well, I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about other people and how to deal with them a little bit. And then I also learned this: you can get things done. You can do things. You can accomplish things if you put your mind to it. I knew we could do it, and we did.
I like what you said there about just being able to get things done. You can do. You're a goal setter, and what I want to do on this podcast is bring high performing people on here. I'm a high performance coach. I've been studying high performance because it's like, how do some people just get things done? They rally people, they're productive, they make an impact. And I want to bring people that are performing in a variety of different, when we think about high performance, we think of the top 15% in any field and people that are just making things happen. Right. And here you are, you were compelled, making $100 a month to put yourself out there. And people, I mean, I saw you. People, you're just not going to make people happy. And you told people to kiss your ass, and you made it happen anyway. And you rallied the people, right? And you made things happen. And like you said, not everyone is going to like you, and that's a bitter pill to swallow. When you step up in leadership, you're like, I'm here to do good. Well, no matter what you do, what you think is good, someone else thinks you're being an ass, and they just don't like what you're doing, and they have a different way of wanting to do it. And,
so I don't know if you remember that when I was leaving office, you wrote me a note.
Yes, I did.
It's in my book.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's in my book. And you basically said, Luge, you have been the woman in the arena, as Teddy Roosevelt once described. Yeah. You've been the woman in the arena, and you've done what you thought was right. And that really meant something to me. Now, I got this out because I thought that this might be interesting to your readers. But in my book, I have a chapter entitled "The Truth as I See It." And it is about leadership and about the problems that elected officials face. Well, here's a page I have entitled "My Advice for Holding Public Office." So as I was
going to ask you about that, like what would someone need to know if they're considering this?
So as I was mayor, I would kind of, again, I was in the back of my mind, I was thinking to myself, you know, this is a great story. And so I was taking notes. So I put together this list. You want to hear them?
Yeah, well, yeah, I love it.
Okay. Respect is earned, but it is also given.
Absolutely.
Choose your friends carefully. Surround yourself with competent, trustworthy, enthusiastic people. Guard what you say and who you say it to. That's number one rule for a public official, by the way. Always have a plan and a backup plan.
Yeah.
Work hard to have public support and confidence. And I think that's something that me and the little committees that we put together, that we worked well at. You know, we started our downtown project with a committee of 10 people. And by the time we were through, we had 40 members.
Oh, that's
People notice success.
Mm-hmm.
They notice when you get something done. Don't you hate to be on a committee and just sit there and do nothing and shake your head? Work hard, have public confidence and public support. Be accessible. And of course, that's what you were saying. I felt like a mayor should be accessible. I think I knew one mayor in my whole life, and that was Mayor C.W. Parker here in Waynesville. Of course, everybody thought they knew him. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to be just like him. Network with other leaders. Involve the kids. I have a whole chapter in my book called So You're the President of Waynesville? And one of the things that I always believed as a teacher, is probably my teacher mindset, is that you have to involve the kids. If you involve the kids, you involve their parents. If you involve the kids, you give them ownership in your community.
That's how you build the next generation of leaders, right?
Yes, we had such a problem with graffiti and nasty things, vandalism that was going on in the park.
Yeah.
Well, we included so many people when we built that playground. And I thought to myself, you know what? There's so many kids here today at all the different events we had. They're not going to let anybody tear that place up. You know, they're not going to be doing the things that sometimes they do. So involve the kids. Cultivate champions for every project. I just talked to a newly elected council person yesterday, and that's the number one thing I said to the person.
People support what they create. So if you get buy-in and they create it, they will run with it.
And if you're a champion, you're enthusiastic about it.
Yep. Leadership, you got to be a cheerleader. Give people the opportunity to run with something and then cheer them on. What resources do you need?
And as the city council person or as the mayor, what can we do to help you? I think that was one thing that was lacking in downtown Waynesville for so many years, that there was no support from the city government. Yeah. And downtown just fell apart. Yeah. And, you know, it took a whole community down there. Ursul's Jewelry, Security Bank, Prue's, all those people began to take their money and invest in their building. And then when they saw that the city was going to do that, it changed everything. Here's one that we could really use a lot today on the national scene. Encourage compromise and consensus.
Yeah.
I'm so old, Jay, that I remember when politics was compromising to get things done. We don't compromise anymore. And I was lucky as a mayor to have city councils that we did compromise, that we did get along, we worked together. It wasn't some fight every time that we got together. Next one, praise performance. And I think I did a good job of that. I was always awarding somebody a good citizenship award or nominating them for awards. To me, that's important in a city. Again, it gives you ownership. Learn all you can about everything. Take every opportunity to be involved in the community. Make a difference. Be enthusiastic and positive. Try to be a role model, and I say try because sometimes I do things maybe I shouldn't. But try to be.
Everyone falls short. No one is infallible to mistakes, but
and I like a good cold beer.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. I've seen you at Harper's quite a bit. That's our local watering hole.
Some of the worst comments I had from people over the years were, especially little old ladies, that would write me and say, Luge, you really shouldn't be talking about drinking. It puts you in a bad light. It's not like I'm going out and getting drunk.
Yeah,
it's meeting and having meetings. And then lastly, and I think, again, I did a good job of this, and I think any leader who is successful will be themselves. I never changed. What you saw was what you got, whether it was cold beer, or whether it was me saying a curse word every once in a while.
Yeah,
it was what it was, and I was not going to change. And I really think people appreciate that. They appreciated that.
Well, they see what's going on in Washington, and it's just like it just makes you aggravated at the whole system.
Oh, it's horrible. It's like kids on a playground.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing you wanted to ask me about was let me change it a little bit. I had two very successful careers. I hate to say politics is a career, but I spent a lot of time at it.
Yeah.
Probably the best thing I did in my life was have children, get married, have children, raise two good kids. They both graduated here in Waynesville. But I had two great careers, and in both of them, Jay, I had mentors who I fashioned myself after. And I would think to your audience that that is something that you really need to think about. Put yourself around people who are positive, who are like you. You know, I like that phrase they use on Facebook a little bit, find your people.
Yeah.
Find your people. And my first mentor was my high school history teacher. I love that man, and I still do. He's 90 years old and on Facebook.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yes. He is quite the character, Mr. Harold Coogan. And I would sit in his class. Of course, I always felt like I wanted to be a teacher. But I would sit in his history class and just mesmerized by him. He was so smart. And I can remember even in my high school days, I want to be just like him. I want to be just like him. Well, guess what? I think I almost made it.
You followed his pathway.
I almost made it. So when I retired, I got Social Studies Teacher of the Year in Missouri. And so when we went for the award, they asked me to speak. I spoke about Mr. Coogan.
Oh, that's awesome.
And, yeah. And
what was about it? What kind of takeaways or advice did he give you that resonated with you?
I think he was just a good role model.
Mm-hmm.
He was a good role model. He was a good teacher.
Yeah.
I tried to be that way. I didn't try to be heavy-handed in my teaching. You know, I tried to be friendly with the kids without being friends.
Yep.
And Mr. Coogan was always good at that. But I think more than anything, he was academic. He was an academic. And you can read his stuff on Facebook now. And I share a lot of his stuff, actually. And every once in a while, I'll say, at the bottom, I'll put a little asterisk. Mr. Coogan was my history teacher in high school. But he
challenged you. He challenged you as well academically.
When I grow up, I want to be just like him.
Yeah.
And the other mentor I had, I already mentioned, was Mayor Parker. When I first moved to Waynesville in 1971, he was the mayor. He went on to be the superintendent of schools and was very, very well known by people. And in fact, he wrote a book. He wrote a book about being mayor, and it was called I Wouldn't Have Missed It. And in my book, I say, I should have named my book, and I wouldn't have missed it either, because he kind of set the stage for it. And everybody knew him. He was everywhere. You know, everybody just felt like they knew him. And that's one thing I wanted to do. I wanted the kids in Waynesville to remember a time when they knew a mayor. That's kind of corny. But
no, I mean, you say that, but you mentioned earlier that you only knew one mayor your whole life. I don't know. I think I may have only known, I've known two mayors. I've been on this rock for 43 years. and that we just talked about earlier about how only 8% of people showed up for the local election. Government and making an impact starts at home. Washington, what happened there, what we're all focused on, doesn't really have that big of an impact here.
Unless they give us some grant money for parks and roads.
Yeah. But with all the time and energy that we spend focusing on that, if we were to channel that into our local communities, the world would be a greater place, right? Our local communities all across, wherever you're listening to this podcast from, your local community would benefit from more people engaged locally.
And don't you think that if all of us took the time to make our little corner of the world better, which I hope that I did, I hope I did have some impact, it would be a much more pleasant world.
Absolutely. You want to change the world, why don't you start by making your bed and being a better person and picking up the garbage down the street? And I don't know, maybe just a random act of kindness as opposed to spending all your time on Facebook yelling about something that you're not going to change anyone's mind on anyway. Whoa, I get fired up about that stuff.
I'd be a complainer. Complaining never did anything. Yeah. And it is so funny because you asked me to talk, to mention some habits that I had. And I said, I believe I've already said it, that I was a goal setter. But you know what else I do every morning?
What's that?
I make my bed.
That's how you start changing the world. You got to make the bed.
I explained to my grandson not long ago. He left his bed undone, and I said, Paul, you need to get up in the morning and make your bed because it sets the stage for the whole day. Of course, he's like 15. He doesn't really understand any of that. But I remember reading an essay from a general, an Army general, and maybe he gave it at a commencement.
It was Admiral McCraven, and he gave it at making your bed. Yep.
He said one of the best things you can do is get up and make your bed because it organizes you. It shows that you do have respect.
Yep. And if your day is shit, at least you come home to a nice bed because it sucks to go to bed when your bed's all jacked up. So there's a whole bunch of talking points about making your bed, but those disciplined habits really, they carry over. How you do one thing is how you do everything. When I think about that, something as simple as making my bed, the years of my life where I didn't make my bed were probably some of the shittiest years I ever had because everything else was out of whack. Like I wasn't making my bed, so I probably wasn't intentional with my relationships. I was drinking a lot of beer, playing video games. Like everything was just out of whack. Now I make my bed and I have a disciplined morning routine and it sets the tone. I have an evening routine. My bed is made. How you do one thing is how you do everything. So even these little things matter.
Oh, yes. And I think that they help you meet the challenges that you're going to have.
Absolutely.
And I'm talking not only just about the everyday challenges. All of us every day, we wake up and we face challenges. I don't care if it's getting in your car and going to work. That's a challenge. But how about the big challenges? And how are you going to respond to those? For example, in my case, it was going to college. Well, I knew I wanted to go to college. I worked my butt through college, ended up with some loans, but I was a worker, paid off my debts. My parents had no money to help me. And so I just did it. Where there's a will, there's a way. The other thing, the other big challenge in my life, I'm going to mention two more, is my husband's death. My husband and I have been married for 40 years, and he developed kidney failure. Yeah. And he was only 60. And so, we had just retired. I think he got to enjoy maybe 3 years. We built this nice, beautiful home, and we were going to enjoy our last years together. And Paul got kidney failure. And I will tell you, anytime you lose a spouse, and even if it's through divorce, whatever it is, anytime you lose a spouse, your whole life changes. Yeah. Everything about your day changes. Yeah. And I think I was, in fact, I'm glad I did it. I was very open with my husband's problems and in fact told the story on Facebook. Yeah. And I would always say, "Sweet Paul update." Hospitaling here, he was in the hospital like 24 times. And he just suffered a whole lot. And I think the biggest challenge was not going through that. The biggest challenge for me has been what to do afterwards. And, I'm by myself. And it's a big difference when you're by yourself. Yeah. Yeah. And then as I became mayor, the flood of 2013. Were you here then?
I was here. Yeah. That was pretty bad. Yeah.
The flood of 2013 was really something that I think probably molded me as a leader. Much like presidents, they can go in and say, "I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that." And then World War II starts. Yeah. The Korean War starts. Yeah. Or 9/11 happens. So it changes everything. And the flood, I think, changed everything for Waynesville. We have spent, when I left office, we were still working on projects to make Waynesville safer for our people. You'll remember that we lost the Lee family, Jessica and her young son, Eli. And that, I think I have a little PTSD about that. Every time I talk about the flood, I cry. And probably most of it has to do with the Lee family. But we learned lessons there. And I will tell you another thing I learned. People in Waynesville and probably any community, small community, are resilient. We come back and we help each other. That the morning of the flood, General Smith called me. One of the first phone calls I got was General Smith. "What can we do to help?" what equipment do you need? It was just an experience. And again, I have a chapter in that in my book. I think you will enjoy reading it, and especially Jay, if you were here during that time, you will not maybe enjoy it, but you will take a trip down memory lane. You know, every time I read that chapter, I've read my book 10 times. Every time I read it, I cry.
2013, I was probably a platoon leader here, or trying to think what I would have been doing. Maybe an XO, busy doing stuff on the fort. What was your greatest challenge as a leader, making $100 a month?
Yeah.
Well, incredible to me. And you're dealing with this like community crisis. You see because it was downtown Waynesville, it was flooded. It was bad. And so what were some of the greatest challenges that you had to tackle as mayor?
And of course, think back, it wasn't really the Ruby Doo in 2013. It was Mitchell Creek.
Yeah.
Where all that water had rushed across the interstate and literally took out one of our subdivisions.
Yeah.
And of course, that's where Jessica and her son were washed away. But I think the biggest challenges that we faced was trying to help our citizens. You know, that right away FEMA said we couldn't have individual help. So there we were. And so as a city, we had to try to do everything we could ethically and legally to help our people. And, you know, whether it was removing, this is the truth, 320 tons of trash.
Wow.
It was horrible.
Yeah.
And our cities around us all sent their trucks, you know, helped clean it up.
Yeah.
We had our fire department pumping basements.
Yeah.
It was just really a community thing. But I think the best thing that came out of that again was the idea that we are a community. We all have to work together. And if you don't work together, you don't get much done. And I'll just mention this, that when the flood was over, everything calmed down, people began to look for who to blame. And, you know, and that was a bad time for me, really, really was. And again, little PTSD going on.
Yeah. So I mean, at the time, what's amazing about our country is when we do have disasters and we do have things that happen, we do rally. We do overcome it. We'll attack it. But then as soon as like things calm down,
we forget.
Then we get back to our politics and we get back to, trying to armchair quarterback everything. And that's
looking for somebody to blame. And I think maybe some of that is just human nature. You know, for example, in the flood, your home's destroyed. It surely wasn't my fault.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think you'll enjoy reading that story. The other challenge for me has been writing my book. And again, I kind of planned on it as throughout my years. Mm-hmm. But when COVID hit last April and we were kind of locked in, I began working on my book. And so I worked on it probably 8 months. And it has been a challenge for me because I'm not a writer. I'm not, I was the high school newspaper editor, that kind of thing. Uh-huh. I think sometimes I like to use Facebook for writing. I like to write stories and that kind of thing. So I will just warn you, Jay, I may have caught the writing bug.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I may have caught the writing bug. And again, we're very looking forward to getting our book out. And then for me, it's going to be, what's my next adventure?
What do you think it's going to be?
Well, I think that first of all, I want to travel. My gosh, I have missed it so much. Mm-hmm. Throughout my life has just changed. I've had 4 major changes in my life. And even little changes, like when I was teaching and they'd give me a new course. Or when I was at Drury University and they'd give me a new course to teach. Change is good for me. Yeah. It's always been good for me. It energizes me. It gives me a new focus. Yeah. And so that's kind of what I'm looking forward to now.
I like that you mentioned that because oftentimes we tend to get a little stale and we get a little comfortable.
Yes.
And you're not growing in comfort. It's okay to have moments of comfort, but if you stay there too long, you're going to get stagnant.
So I was teaching American history to sophomores. Mm-hmm. And you almost get to the point where It's the same thing year after year after year. Well, I very quickly became what I call the project lady. We did projects, we made things, we had guests come in. I tried to do so many different things. I always had a World War II day.
Uh-huh.
Believe it or not, there were a lot of them still alive then. I would have a Vietnam day where veterans would come in and share their stories. It was awesome.
Yeah.
And I taught a Black history class, probably the first one at Waynesville High School. And most of my kids were African American. And in February, I got with the local radio stations and we put together PSAs. They had to research it, write it, and perform it. And one of them was my NFL player, C.J. Mosley. And to this day, every time I talk to him, he mentions, remember when we went to the radio station? He was so thrilled with that. So awesome. I just think changing direction in your life, as you are doing, obviously, and when you leave the military, you will do that. When I left being the mayor, and when I left being a teacher, I left being my classroom on the top. I mean, I was doing good, and I thought, there's more to life than this, and I'm gonna give somebody else a chance. And guess what? There was somebody waiting in the wings to take my place, and I think that with the mayor too. My joke is that 2 terms were good enough for George Washington. It's good enough for me.
Good for you.
I never intended to be mayor for life, even though I enjoyed it. I just think that change is good. New ideas are good.
Yeah.
We've got some new city council people in St. Robert and in Waynesville. I think that's good. You have new ideas.
Let me ask you just a couple questions to kind of dig into, talk about goal setting. I want to hit some habits and what do you think, what inspired you to become a teacher? We'll start there.
Probably.
Like you said, you had a teacher, but what really motivated you to go down that path?
Can I be very honest and tell you that I have an ego?
You have an ego. Okay.
And I don't think you can be a good teacher or a good mayor if you don't have an ego. Uh-huh. And I wanted to do something good.
Yeah.
For my family, my background, I wanted to be that college graduate. I wanted to be that teacher. And so I think desire might be the answer to what you're asking. I had a desire for it, and I was going to make it happen. And I think the same thing was true with my political career. Mm-hmm. I was, again, a goal setter. The other thing that I was always good at, I may have said this already, is seeing things through. Mm-hmm. So if you set a goal, it doesn't do any good if it just sits on your desk. You got to see it through, and you got to make it happen. And that's what we did in Waynesville when I was on city council and mayor.
There's like a joke. It's like 5 frogs are sitting on a log, 4 decide to jump. How many jumped? None of them, because they just decided, they didn't take action. And that's how most people think about things. And they decide to do something, but they still haven't taken the action.
Yeah.
And putting yourself out there and taking the action. So when you decided to run for mayor, what? And you put yourself out there for $100 a month, and you had
all my motivation, really, Jay, I'm telling you the truth. My motivation was to make downtown better. That's why I ran. And then all of a sudden I decided, you know what, we can get things done.
Yeah.
And whether it was, my group was the one that did the certification of the National Historic Trail for the Trail of Tears. We did that. We succeeded at that. It took us like 4 years, but we did it. The playground, the massive response that we had from our community took us 2 years, but we did that too.
Yeah, that playground's awesome. I mean, it's nice. We have a great park.
To me, those are the things that you've got to do. You've got to have a desire. You've got to follow through.
Were there ever moments where you're just like, to hell with this? Like, this isn't worth it? Or did you have moments where, that you just didn't want to do it? You're just like, screw this. I'm just tired of all the resistance.
You will probably remember some of them.
What's the one that was the most impactful? Like, when was the time that you had that you're just like, man, this is just not worth the $100 a month, and why did I get myself into this? But you can't quit, but you wanted to. Every fiber in your being was just like, I'm over this.
Probably after the flood.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was so much, I almost used the word hatred aimed at not only the city, but me. And it was a very, very hard time.
What was some of the blame? What were some of the complaints people had?
You'll remember that we had just built the bridge on Highway H, old Highway H. We built that bridge by the tennis courts.
Yep.
I don't know if you know this, but small towns are graded by different things. And one thing that government people grade is how many low water crossings do you have? Because they're very dangerous. In Waynesville, we had 2. When I left office, we had none. So that was something I'm very proud of. The Dyer Street Bridge, and then the building of the old H Bridge. When we built that bridge, and you may not know this, but that was about the only way that a bus came down from the new high school. And when it was stormy, you had to go the outer road. But there wasn't even GW Lane then. It was an outer road. Yeah. So it was a mess. And so we decided, our first focus was going to be that old H Bridge. Well, we put it in, and I want to say that it was like the week after that the flood happened. A camper trailer was washed out of someone's backyard, came down and blocked that bridge. Mm-hmm. And so then the water cascaded into that subdivision. And so that was the city's fault. Mm-hmm. When in fact, since 2013, that bridge has worked perfectly because it was engineered for the water to flow over it. If it got too much, the water would flow over it. That day, a travel trailer, which I have a picture of, by the way, that travel trailer blocked that. And again, you got to look for somebody to blame. Yeah. And I had a couple of people who were very, very nasty, and I actually talk about them in my book. And then another hard time for me was the Uranus Examiner chapter.
Yeah. So for those that don't know, we have the Uranus Factory, which is just outside of town, and it's been like I think they got a TV show going right now, and Louis is a very interesting.
He's an interesting guy.
Interesting guy. And there's been a lot of he's the mayor of Uranus. I don't think it's an official town yet.
No, it's not. I actually in my book called him a marketing genius.
Oh yeah, no, it's funny. I get the Uranus Examiner, and it's funny every time I see him. Like, it's just funny. It's just comical, and he's down Route 66, so he's well known across the country now, and it's here in the neighborhood. There's some politics.
Does great things for Route 66. I never spoke out against his amusement area. Yep. I understand that place, it was wonderful, and still is, But when they announced they were going to replace our newspaper with a newspaper called the Uranus Examiner, it just I just felt like that was mocking our community. Yeah. And I did not want that to be what people thought of when they thought of our community. Yeah. So I spoke up. And as happens so often, when you speak up, and it gets awful lonely.
Yeah, no, I saw some of the social media traffic on that, and it was entertaining. I'm not gonna lie, but it was like one of those wow, you spoke your mind, and I just saw the backlash, and you took it with grace, and you told the line as a leader should, and you just stood up for yourself.
I made one comment publicly about it. I said, a community determines the community they have. The citizens determine the community they have. Yeah. And in my opinion, that was not the newspaper we wanted to represent us. Yeah. And, in my book, I say this, I say, I wonder how popular the Uranus world would have been. Think about that. Maybe it would have.
Maybe it would have.
If you think back, we were on the night talk shows, and Jimmy Kimmel and James Corden. We were all over those shows, and we really were. Excuse this, okay? But we were the butt of many jokes. Yeah. So it was a hard time for me, and again, I felt at times like I was just out there by myself, when in fact people were privately saying to me, "Oh, we agree with you. We agree with you."
Yeah.
I think there was only one elected official who actually spoke up and said something on Facebook, for examul.
Did that frustrate you to hear like, yeah, I agree with you, but I'm not going to speak
No,
up?
I don't say anything. It can be very lonely.
Yeah. Did that bother you?
It did for a little while.
Yeah.
But again, I felt like, and this is the truth, if I had to go back and do it again, I would do the same thing.
Yeah.
I would do the same thing. I had no intention of speaking up that day, but we were sitting in a chamber meeting and KY3 walked in the back door.
Yeah.
So that was going to be the lead story on the news that night.
Take advantage whether they're.
Oh my. Well, I was just embarrassed. I was embarrassed with the name, the innuendo,
Yeah.
Of sophomoric humor is what I would call it.
It's fun, but you're right. It started taking like, okay, this is over. It's fun. It's all good. But yeah, it's starting to affect the community. We don't want to be labeled like this is a good community. And if you read the paper, like it's fun. I don't want my kids reading that.
Yeah. It wasn't a serious newspaper.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it could have been. They had someone hired who knew what she was doing. And
yeah.
But the name was just too much. So anyway, those were two things that were really hard for me.
Yeah.
And for the most part, I didn't let the social media bother me.
Yeah.
I slept well at night.
Yeah. If someone told you that they were thinking about entering, local politics, and making a difference, but they're just worried about, the backlash and all the things that you got to deal with because you're throwing yourself out there, what advice would you give them?
Well, I would say go for it. I'd go for it. Make a difference. Take part, if you don't like it after the 2 years or the 4 years, quit. But I just felt like I could handle it. Again, it took me about a month to get over that.
Yeah.
Get my feelings hurt, yeah. But I would do it again.
What were some of the biggest things that you learned about yourself by putting yourself out there that you maybe going into it, you kind of think you have a perspective of how it's going to be, but something along the way changed your perspective? What are some of those things?
My communication skills got much better because I began to realize very quickly that when I said something, it was the city saying it. And so I had to be very careful. The other thing that really struck me about myself, I've always been a lover, not a fighter. And I stood up to people. Yeah. And sometimes that's hard to do. And it's especially hard to do when they're your friends. Yeah. This is a small town. I knew most of these people. I had them in school. Yeah. They were my neighbors. And yet you had to make a decision. So I think decision making is something that you have got to be fairly good at. I mean, you learn as you go, which obviously I did. And I had good advisors, Mr. Harrell, the city administrator, the city council. I had good partners. Yeah. And that helps. But
well, it's good that you leverage that too, because when you're in leadership, like, I'm familiar with military leadership because I've been in command, having a good team around you to help make the decisions so you can talk things through, and you're making decisions on behalf of the city. I had to make decisions on behalf of the Army. I had to take my personal bias out of things sometimes for the benefit of the Army and the soldier, and these were life-changing decisions sometimes that had tremendous impact. And, no doubt as a mayor as well, you had to make tough decisions.
I can remember dealing with some personnel issues that really hit me in the heart. I am serious. And some of them were even my old students. They were people that I knew well, but they had done wrong. Yeah. And we had to make these decisions. And it was a very hard thing to do. Yeah. But you got to do what's right.
Absolutely.
But I have just enjoyed talking to you so much.
No, this is great. I love this.
And I can't believe it. I'm looking up at the time up there, Jay. We've been talking for nearly 50 minutes.
It goes by quick, doesn't it?
Oh my gosh. It wasn't like teaching, sometimes my classes seemed like they went on for hours.
Well, let me ask you a couple more questions before we end this, because I know that you have something going on. I got to get my kids off to soccer, but we think about doing hard things, because that's what this podcast is all about. Difficult challenges, having disciplined habits. We kind of touched on making your bed and some of those things. What are some of the disciplined habits or things that you've done in your life that have enabled you to deal with some of the challenges, like your husband passing, the challenges you had as a local politician and mayor when everyone was against you, the difficult times in life? What are some of the things that have happened to you, or some of the habits or discipline? What is the hard thing that you do to make you better, to deal with it?
One of the things that I always try to do is compartmentalize things.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure you're familiar with that. You got a place over here for the work. You got a place over here for your heartache. Here for your grandkids. And you just got to compartmentalize them so that they don't overwhelm you. I think that is something that people are, especially in the social media day. I read some of the stuff on Facebook, and I'm thinking to myself, baby, usually some of my girlfriends, baby, you really need to let that go.
Yeah.
You need to let that go and move on.
Yeah.
And don't dwell on it.
Yeah.
And that's a challenge for me sometimes.
What made the switch? Because this is we all have two brains. We've got logic brain, then we got lizard brain. Lizard brain is the one that's emotional and it's that lizard running around in your head doing all these things. That's what you see on Facebook. How do you think that you were able to compartmentalize and switch that on and off? Because that's truly, I learned that through personal development and just reading and being like, I can have psychological discipline over my emotions. Where do you think, did you always have that? Was that something you learned?
I think it's something you learn.
Yeah.
And you and I both are great examples. You've got military Jay. You've got Daddy Jay.
Yeah.
You've got motivational Jay. Well, I was Mayor Luge, right? I was Grandma Luge. I was Mama Luge. So you just learn to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I try my best to leave some of the worries at home, but I will tell you, as a mayor, it was hard to do. I could do it better in the classroom than I could as mayor. With the mayor, honest to goodness, Jay, some days I felt like I was a mother to 5,000 people.
Yeah.
And the day I left office on a Thursday night, and when I really noticed it was the next Monday. I woke up and it was like my shoulders had just done this, because I was always like this.
Yeah.
Always ready. And my shoulders were just relaxed. And it was almost like it was a new day. And I think, again, those are just things you learn as you age.
Yeah.
And anytime you want to know anything about aging, that's me. So.
Well, that leads me to my last question, because I meant to ask this earlier.
Okay.
We kind of talked about this before we got the podcast started, but you've been on the planet for over 70 years. You've studied history. You have experience in local politics. What do you think of the climate that we're currently in? And what do you think the way ahead is going to be based off, all the wisdom that you have and the experiences that you have? How are we going to get out of this very divisive society that we're in right now?
I don't see it happening until we learn to compromise again. I was hoping that President Biden would bring some of that back, but it's been very hard to do. As a history teacher, I've said this to many people. It must be, right now, it must be what it was like during the McCarthy period. The way we bicker with each other, we disagree with each other. I think, again, social media has fed a lot of that. You feel like now you have the opportunity to say what you think.
Yeah.
Because everybody wants to know what you think. At least that's what you think. I think it is a very bad time in our history. And all these people, the other day I was reading something and said, the QAnon people had a meme and it said, "You know what's coming, be ready." So I did a little research and I'm trying to figure out, what are they talking about? You know what they're talking about? Civil war. Okay, are you going to suit your girls up? Which side are they going to be on?
Yeah.
Which side are they going to die on? That, to me, that is just ridiculous. We have got to get back to being Americans and not being party people.
Yeah, I agree. And you and I have different ideologies. Well, I hear stuff like that, and it's on both sides. Like, what are we really, like, civil war? Like, no, I'm not taking arms against and that's ridiculous.
I will tell you that as a Democrat, as a Republican, we have a lot more in common than we
absolutely, I believe we do. Just how to get there is a little bit different, but we all want the same things.
And take the time to talk to each other. All we do is yell at each other.
Yep.
And call each other names. And we've got to get away from that. We've just got to get back to being Americans. Steve Lynch and I, who is our state representative, Steve Lynch and I were perfect examples of that. He's a diehard Republican, and I'm somewhat a moderate Democrat. Really, I am. But we got along so well. Yeah. Because our number one concern was our community. Mm-hmm. It was not gun control and whatever. It wasn't abortion. It wasn't all these issues that come down the party line. It was taking care of the people at home. Yeah. But I enjoyed my time as mayor. Again, I would go back and do it all over again. My teaching career, I would go back and do it in a heartbeat. I have so many friends, Jay, from my Facebook page. I've probably got 2,000 old students that I'm friends with on Facebook. And we keep up with each other. We talk with each other. Yeah. And so it's just what a rewarding life I've had. Not that it's over, but a rewarding life that I've had, and 2 rewarding careers that I've had.
No, it's incredible. I just look at you as just a solid leader. Like what you're consistent with who you are. You've put yourself out there in the service of our community and our country, but being a teacher, you've made such a tremendous impact and difference. It inspires me to want to give back and do things. And I think that you're a tremendous role model. And I'm excited to read your book, Small Town Mayor. I'll put the link to that in the show notes. And congratulations on doing a great job as mayor. I'm excited to see you're working with the Missouri Route 66 Centennial Commission. And you got some other projects. You're still leading. You're still doing things and making an impact.
Good work. We're going to work hard on replacing the Ruby-Doo Bridge.
That's outstanding. That's awesome.
I might call you up and get you involved in that.
All right. Well, let me know how I can help.
Okay.
All right, Luge, appreciate your time. Thanks for being on the podcast. For everyone else that's listening, keep doing hard things. We'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you.